Hey, this is Mark Altman, one half of the Inglorious Trexperts, and Season 2 begins this month on the Electric Surge Network. Keep boldly going as we return to the airwaves with airwaves? I don't know. It's not really airwaves, is it? It's like, what is streaming? It's like zeros and ones, right, Darren?
We return to the Wi-Fi.
We return to the Wi-Fi, wherever you listen to podcasts. So join the Inglorious Trexperts for an all-new season of Inglorious Trexperts.
Hi, this is not really George Lucas, but I just want to encourage you to, if you're listening to podcasts, why not listen to The Rebel and the Rogue? You might as well.
If you're a fan of the 4:30 movie, you'll love Best Movies Never Made, hosted by myself, Josh Miller.
And Steven Scarlatta,
where we explore some of the greatest movies never made, like E.T. 2,
Johnny Quest,
Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian,
and Halloween 3D.
New episodes available every other Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Back in the 70s and 80s, before the advent of VHS, chances are if you saw a classic movie, it was on the 4:30 movie. With their famous theme weeks, it was a chance to see movies you'd never seen before and get reacquainted with some old classics. So now, join us for the 4:30 movie.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and we are back, baby. We're back. The 4:30 movie is back on the air, back streaming, back in your car, in your house, in your head. You can't get away from us.
We're podcasting from inside the house.
It's the second season of the 4:30 movie, and all your favorite and least favorite 4:30 movie hosts are back. And first, of course, the man with the plan, the man who always knows what he's going to say and has done the research, he's done the homework, he comes prepared, he's ready for action, he has incredible depth of knowledge, he is a writer, an Emmy Award winner for,
nominee.
He's an Emmy Award nominee, just as good to be nominated.
Screw that award anyway.
Shows like Star Wars Rebels, he's worked on Resistance, Carmen Sandiego, Rusty and Big Guy the Boy Robot.
Big Guy.
The Big Guy. He's the Big Guy. And he is Steve Melching. Steven Melching.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, we're glad to see you, Steve. It's great.
It's exciting to be back after all this time.
Welcome back. You look a year older,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
I love how you wore your Planet of the Apes 4:30 movie logo wear today for the return of the show. These are the beautiful
Available at 430movie.com, by the way.
That's right, where you can get all these movie-inspired 4:30 movie logo treatments courtesy of Darren Docterman. They're great. In fact, I don't know why I'm not wearing my Psycho 4:30 movie shirt today. Because, right, it was in the laundry. Anyway, it's available at 430movie.com. And you should check it out because they're awesome. And, I mean, there's such a wide array of designs that Darren has done. And
they have a wide selection.
And speaking of Darren Docterman is back, concept artist for shows like Westworld. He worked on Star Trek Picard. He is a man who's worked on movies like Riddick and X2. He's done it all. He's seen it all. He's back. Darren Docterman.
Thank you. It was actually X3.
X3. I stand The Last Stand.
Yeah, the one that people like a little better now.
It's all relative.
But thanks. It's good to be back, and I feel young.
Well, that makes one of us.
Yeah.
And over here next to me in the spot the spot. He's in the spot. He's in his usual spot. He is a writer-producer who's worked on such shows as Lore, Fringe, Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles. And, of course, he wrote X-Men First Class. Not The Last Stand.
Not The Last
Much
Stand.
more beloved. And Thor. And he is, of course, Ashley Edward Miller. Ashley, welcome back.
Your revered Admiral Nagura invoked a little-known, seldom-used reserve activation clause.
This podcast will not take more than 1 hour. That'd be a pleasant
that's
surprise.
What I call unwarranted.
And I, of course, am Mark A. Altman, executive producer and creator of Pandora, and author of The 50-Year Mission. And what other books have I written? Well, I got
So Say We All.
So Say We All about
which
Battlestar
I'm reading right now,
Galactica.
which is terrific. You should get it. It's
Thanks,
awesome if you like
Steve.
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And if you don't like Battlestar Galactica, it's still good.
You know who should read it? Sam Esmail. who's
Yes.
creating that new Battlestar Galactica series. I think he could learn a lot from the
Lot of knowledge
mistakes
in it.
and the successes of the past. Absolutely. I think, I was saying to Ed Gross, I wrote it with the other day, that now they should release it in paperback. And speaking of paperback, 50-Year Mission comes out in paperback this month. So check it out if you didn't purchase it in hardcover, which I personally prefer.
Margins, it's classy.
It's classy. It looks good on a shelf. I get more royalties. But the paperback is out this month, and of course my new book. Nobody says it. Nobody says it. Nobody says it as lamely as I do. Nobody does it better. The oral history of the James Bond movies will be out in February from Tor Forge, and it may be. Well, I can't say it's my best book yet, but it's Ed Gross's best book yet. So check that out. Anyway, it's really great to be back and to celebrate. Steve, did we decide, are we calling it Spooktober or Scaretober?
I don't know. Maybe should we vote, or do I have any other
Put it
ideas?
up to a vote?
Any other lame ideas?
Is it Scaretober, Spooktober, or none of the above?
None-tober.
Yeah, none-tober.
It's Monster Month. How about that?
I
Some
like Monster
alliteration.
Month better.
Monster Month.
It's putting Tober on the end of things is really
It's not a tober.
it's last century.
Says the man who celebrates Spooktober all month long.
Yeah, but that's a real holiday.
Okay, fair enough. What are we calling it? Monster something? Monster truck?
Monster
What?
Month? I don't know.
Monster.
Who cares?
Okay, it doesn't matter. The point is, all month long, we are celebrating Halloween
Right.
on the 4:30 movie. Okay, we're going to celebrate Halloween. So each theme week, as you know, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we curate a week of theme movies picked by your panel each day of the week on our fantasy theme channel. And now with streaming, who knows? Maybe one day there will be a 4:30 movie channel one day. But in homage to the great 4:30 movie that of our youth. And on Monday it'll be Steve. Tuesday Darren. Wednesday it's the Ashley Miller pick. And
Whatever the hell that is.
like I'm scared. And then Thursday is my multiple picks. And then on Friday we come to a consensus. And we program a fantasy theme week of classic movies based on theme. All October, we will be doing variations on horror themes. Last year, we did vampire movies for Halloween. This year,
It wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough. We needed to do more.
Can never be scared enough.
The audience demanded more. Now there is more.
And he gave him Jaws. That's a great Percy Rodriguez.
Thanks.
Can you do him like in Court Martial?
Now can you cry like Lincoln? No.
Okay. So today, this week on the 4:30 movie, it's Monster Mash. Monster Mash. What does that mean? It means we're doing monster movies.
Monster
We
movies.
wanted
And
to do-
MASH movies.
And MASH movies.
That's right. Elliot Gould and Donald Sutherland. They're on the Monster Mash this week on the 4:30 movie. Okay.
It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
So, a monster, is a pretty broad definition to what a monster is.
Sure.
And
what a MASH is.
I'm curious to see how wide-ranging our picks are.
I'm so
As am
excited. I was looking on the drive to the studio today. I was excited. I was looking forward to be back in the studio with you guys. But now sitting here, waiting to hear what you're going to pick.
You're less excited?
I'm less excited. I'm more excited. I'm even more. I'm fascinated. I want to know. I want to know what deep, thoughtful pick Steve is going to have, what straight down the middle pick Darren is going to have, and what insane, quirky, bizarre pick you're going to have. I mean, that's why I love the show. That's why I keep coming back. Anyway, Steve, let's talk Monday.
Well, for Monday, since this is our first show back in a while, I thought, I'm just going to ease us in. My pick is kind of straight down the middle for a change. So I'm going to go old school with one of the earliest monster movies, probably one of the most famous. And I think the first monster movie I remember ever seeing as a kid, and that's Frankenstein.
Ooh.
The 1931 James Whale movie starring Boris Karloff, of course, as Frankenstein's monster. Right. It was, from the second film from the Universal Studios monster series. It came out same year as Dracula.
When they were just thinking about making it a franchise.
We're creating a giant shared universe of monsters. And
No, there had been a few monster movies prior to this. Dracula obviously had come out earlier in 1931. There was, I probably shouldn't mention them because maybe somebody else will pick them, but, the original Nosferatu, the silent Nosferatu. There was a Hunchback of Notre Dame, I believe, in the 1920s. But Dracula was such a big hit for Universal that they immediately, started making more monster movies, and Frankenstein was next up. And originally,
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
It was going to star Bela Lugosi,
Right.
and with a different director, but it was a different take on the character. He was just kind of just a killer. There was no pathos. There wasn't much to the character, so Bela turned it down. And Boris Karloff was cast, and the rest is history. I mean, it's hard to think of a more iconic monster movie from that era.
I was just going to say that Jack Pierce Frankenstein makeup, that's the only thing that not in the public domain from that movie,
Right.
is so iconic. It's so much a part of our childhood growing up, probably things like, even preceding the 4:30 movie. I mean, this was like the weekends, it was probably, it was already off
Creature
the
features.
creature
Yeah.
features and stuff. What a remarkable movie. And, back when, you were a kid, that was a scary movie. Girls getting
scary.
Yeah,
with
still
the the flower, handing the. I mean, gee, she gets dry. It's so powerful. And then the windmill and just the fear of the other. It's so applicable today, isn't it?
Well, and how they created this, a character that's a monster, that's a killer, but you cared about him for, I think, maybe the first time. You cared about the monster more. Like the humans were the monsters.
Yeah, Dr.
Right.
Frankenstein was
Yeah.
the monster, right?
And
And it created the internet.
Yes, he did.
I thought that was Al Gore.
Well, no, but
Same
they
thing.
were carrying torches. It's different.
Yeah.
I got you.
Oh, okay.
It was early Twitter with actual fire.
This movie was very controversial when it came out. It dealt with themes that made a lot of people uncomfortable, and it was banned in some countries. And in the production code era, it was recut to take out some of the stuff that was considered blasphemous.
Right.
The frontal nudity.
Yes.
Well, where Dr. Frankenstein, I've become God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was very controversial. People were very touchy about that stuff in the 30s.
Wonder why.
Later on, Alec Baldwin could say it, no problem. But back then,
Alec Baldwin's Frankenstein.
I'd like to see that. And it's interesting to note that, Frankenstein now is decades and decades and decades old, and it's been remade or Kenneth Branagh did it. It's been done for the True Story with Michael Sarrazin. Hammer did it many times. It's never been done better, at least in my opinion, than that first time by James Whale.
I think we'd all agree.
I know a lot of people are fans of the horror movies like Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed and stuff. I'm not a huge Hammer horror fan, to be honest. I just think that original Universal monster movie is just so good.
Well, I am a huge Hammer horror film fan, but I actually agree. I think that the best expression of Frankenstein on screen has been by far, hands down, the 1931 film, period. And I think that Steve really hit on it. It's because we empathize with the monster in a way that I'm not sure that we do in any of the other incarnations. Even, look, Ken made a really sort of game effort at doing a more specific adaptation of the original novel, and it was really interesting, but I don't know how sympathetic I found Robert De Niro as the monster. And I think that was a huge failing in the movie.
Yeah.
And it didn't quite sync up with sort of the operatic elements that he brought to it, whereas I think James Whale kind of kept it really grounded for a movie about somebody who brings the dead back to life by sewing somebody else's brain into their skull. And you guys are looking at me like, you're insane.
No, I think it's a great point.
I'm frightened at how much I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you have to gut check and go,
we all have these
Where is he wrong?
expressions on our face like, oh my God, Ashley's making sense? What's going on?
maybe I don't make sense.
What have you done with Ashley?
It's been a couple of months.
Therapy.
Billy Shears. Just what a great pick and what a fantastic movie. It's funny that the icon of Disney is a mouse, and after all these years, Universal as this, Frankenstein is more associated with Universal than anything else, and it's
well, it was
and Vin
it
Diesel.
was never not popular between I think the 30s and certainly in the 70s when we were growing up. There was the model kits, there was costumes,
the Aurora model kits. Yeah,
it was on television every year. That's how I first saw it. Watching on black and white TV. I didn't know it was a black and white movie. All we had was a black and white TV. But,
I mean,
it
what
scared the
other
hell out of
monster?
me.
I bet you this Halloween you'll be able to go out and see kids out trick or treating, and I bet you'll see a few Frankenstein's monsters who are inspired by the 1931 film. I mean, how many other film characters can say that, right? That nearly 100 years later, kids are dressing up to pretend to be that. Screw Iron Man. I mean, look at that.
Yeah, will people be dressing up as Stephen Miller for Halloween 100 years from now? Hopefully not. Speaking of monsters. So, so I think that's a great pick for Monday. That's a great way to start off our Monster Mash. Darren Doctorman, Tuesday.
Yes. Well, I'm going to go in a little different direction for a change. Although I am staying with the same studio, Universal. I'm going to go with the movie that really solidified the fact that they did have a monster universe. And this is also a movie that was run constantly when I was a kid.
Oh, I know what you're picking. Oh my gosh.
And Frankenstein is in it.
Oh,
And so
yeah,
are all the other monsters. This is Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
I almost
That's
picked
genius.
that too. That's a great pick.
It is astounding because the movie has all of the elements from all of the previously made monster movies from Universal. And Bela Lugosi is in it, playing Dracula. And Lon Chaney Jr. is playing the Wolfman. They had Glenn Strange playing the monster.
No Boris Karloff now.
But how amazing would it have been if Karloff was in it?
That's why it wasn't my pick.
That is it? Yeah. But it's just so well done, and it's sort of the first mashup of these, hugely popular movies
It's
into
the
one.
Avengers of
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Of Universal
Monsters
Monsters.
Assemble.
Yeah.
And it's so well done, and they don't I mean, these movies weren't made for huge budgets, especially the Abbott and Costello movie. But they don't really cut corners in it. They show you what you're there for. And it's really fascinating. I'm not going to say it's funny, because it's not funny. Abbott and Costello were funny in other venues. This is just like, what am I watching? This is like I'm in a different world. This is the mashup between these two comedians and these real monsters. It upgrades the comedians a little bit, and it downgrades the monsters a little bit, and it creates something completely new that had never been seen before. And it's fascinating, and I just found it very fun to watch when I was a kid. Even now.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
I'm
I'm
here's
done.
what's really confusing me, unsettling me a little bit. Maybe it's upsetting me. I don't know, but like on a sort of an existential level. So about 3 or 4 minutes ago, I made a lot of sense. And just now, you gave an out-of-the-box pick for Tuesday.
Season 2, baby.
Something's happened. There's been like a Freaky Friday with me and Darren.
We might be in a mirror universe now.
Maybe we are. You've almost got a goatee. So, yeah. But I love that pick, man. I think that's great. I loved that movie when I was a kid. That was probably my favorite monster movie when I was a kid.
Yeah.
See, I have a very different perspective than you guys. I never saw the movie as a kid. I did not want peanut butter in my chocolate. I don't like peanut butter. So, I did not want to see Abbott and Costello in a Frankenstein, in a Universal Monsters movie. I thought it was wrong. So, I guess last year, the New Beverly was showing it.
That's interesting.
And I took the kids to see it. We went for the kiddie matinee at the New Beverly, which is great. I love the New Beverly, and
As an
they
excuse.
show great movies. No, as an excuse, but also we were looking to do Halloween movies, and I wasn't going to take them to see The Thing,
Well,
so,
that's good.
So we went, and they loved it too, but I loved it.
It's
Loved
great.
it. It's great, and it's exactly what you said. It's still scary, that stuff with at the beginning where this package is being shipped over
Right.
from Egypt, and it's scary and
Yeah.
suspenseful, and it's the classic Abbott and Costello routines, but in
Yeah.
the context of this horror film. And yeah, I don't like Glenn Strange that much, but but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But Bela Lugosi is great, and it's just so funny, and still doesn't give up on the thrills and the chills of a Universal monster movie. I thought it was great, but and this used to be on all the time as a kid. I never watched it, and I only having seen it recently. You talk about, do these movies hold up? Well, yeah, hell yeah, they do, because I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah.
And
Crazy.
Yeah.
Steve, we haven't heard from you on this one.
Well, I'm kind of in Mark's camp on this. I didn't really, as a kid, like the mixing of the comedians and the monsters. It was kind of inescapable because it was on all the time. So I'd seen I'd seen parts of it, and I'm not 100% sure if I've ever seen the whole thing.
That's interesting.
So I definitely will seek it out now. But
I'm trying to remember what their character names. I think it was Chick and Wilbur.
Something like that. But they're so funny, and it's just
Those are like cat names.
and
No,
also
they're not.
for those of you who have kids out there, it's like it's a great movie to show kids, because
And it's a great movie to sort of introduce your kids to the world of the monsters too.
because
Because it's scary enough to make it fun, but it's not too scary that they'll be afraid all the time.
yeah.
of course, Abbott and Costello, of course, just by themselves are iconic classic comedians, and you should be familiar with them.
Yes.
But their antics are so funny in that, because it's their their persona, their classic personas,
Right.
and they slide so well into a Universal monster movie.
Strangely, they fit strangely well into that.
They have the perfect straight men
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
who play it straight.
But it's so funny, and the way that they integrate all these different characters. And there is something, we made the joke about the Avengers, but there is something really cool about all the monsters, about having Dracula and Frankenstein and the Invisible Man,
the Mummy, and the
Mummy, and
Man.
that and also almost has like that Avengers or MCU tag where the Invisible Man shows up on the boat at the end. No, that's not really a spoiler, but it's kind of like this coda.
It is. It definitely is.
Yeah, I wonder how much, if at all, Feige has been influenced by those movies.
That kind of brings up a question. In a world with monsters who are basically undead, if they had to fight Thanos,
Right.
when Thanos snaps his fingers, if they're
Half of
already
them
dead,
become alive.
That's a whole nother podcast.
that's who you got to recruit.
Ashley just blew my mind.
I'm back, baby.
Well, speaking of Ashley, that brings us to
Wednesday.
Wacky Wednesday.
Odin's Day.
So,
Odin's Day.
Wednesday.
so
Old
Ashley,
One Eye is back.
we have Frankenstein on Monday. Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein on Tuesday. What's it going to be? Wednesday.
My mind is a little blown, honestly. I'm still kind of getting over what just happened with Darren, and
Get over it.
I had a pick that I'm not going to say what it was. I'm gonna save it for Friday. But it was out of the box and a little different. I was waiting for kind of down the middle, and that's not what we got. And so I feel like down the middle kind of
Is
falls
where
to
you
me,
needs to be.
right? So that'll be my out of the box. Will be being down the middle. So I am going to talk about what I think is one of the best horror movies I think ever made. It is unbelievably focused, unbelievably tight. It uses atmosphere in ways that very few movies of any genre have managed to use atmosphere to create a feeling of suspense and dread. There are actually no women in the cast. It's basically a sausage party. And it has my very favorite line of dialogue of all time next to a particular Clarence Boddicker line from RoboCop.
I know what it is.
Oh, I know.
I realize you boys are having a rough time, but I would like it if I do not have to spend the rest of the winter tied to this couch. I am talking, of course, about 1982's The Thing, which will make you look at your German Shepherd differently. It is a John Carpenter film. It's and as that implies, especially of that era, it is uniquely well crafted around a siege mentality. It's basically a siege film. It's also a psychological thriller about paranoia. It also has Wilford Brimley.
The sign of quality,
that's
always.
Right. It's the right thing to do. It's a tasty way to do it.
Yeah.
And of course, it has the great Kurt Russell.
Cocoon.
Yes.
Oh, no. Sorry.
No, yeah. Kurt Russell in my second favorite Kurt Russell role after Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China, even more so than Snake Plissken. So, where to start with this movie? The thing that is most impressive about it are the practical special effects by Rob Bottin. He really takes the state of the art and he moves it to the next level with The Thing. There isn't a frame of that you don't believe, that you don't find unsettling. He takes the idea of body horror and he raises it to a degree that I think even David Cronenberg would sort of have to sit back and go, I got nothing. And even today, it still holds up. I find it frightening enough that when I had the opportunity to watch it as a double feature with E.T., yes, E.T., at the Egyptian with my 10-year-old, I decided it would be bad parenting to stay and watch The Thing with my 10-year-old, even though he probably could have handled it. What else to say about it?
Good choice.
Thank you.
Good choice. Discretion
Discretion
is a better part of valor.
Yeah, right. It's like it's. I was like really proud of myself. That's going to go on my my Dad of the Year application. Didn't take my kid to see The Thing. One of the highlights of my career was meeting Keith David at the Agent Cody Banks premiere, and I had to ask him just stories about The Thing, and he told me the best story where I got used as a prop. He told me about a day when all the actors were sitting around on the set and they were all kind of talking about the script and they were all talking about the technobabble in the script and they were all kind of mocking all the technobabble and all the bull crap and all this other shit. And what they didn't realize was that the mic was hot and that John Carpenter was sitting back there and listening to it. And Keith David grabs me and says, "All right, you or me." John Carpenter comes out. He puts his finger in my face, mad as a mother. He says, "I wrote that script. You don't take this. You're going to say, oh, fuck. And they walked out. And I was like, that's the best story I ever heard, man.
Especially for a writer.
Yeah, totally. And he said, like, after that, they didn't complain about the script at all.
Well, that movie is incredible, and it has one of the great horror techniques of isolating the characters in a way that they're trapped. It's like Alien in a way. They're in this incredibly hostile environment. There's no escape from, and they're trapped with this creature that could be anyone or anything around them. And it has some of the best jump scares in a movie. I hesitate to spoil them, but they're absolutely. They still get me every time.
Oh, my God, the blood test.
I was just going to say, one of the most
great.
Influential scenes, I can't tell you, I'm sure you've been there too, how many times in the writer's room somebody would say, hey, how do we do the blood test scene in The Thing? And I did it on Deep Space Nine with the changelings, and they admit it. They said, we just did The Thing.
Shameless ripoff.
Yeah.
But it's so effective. Or
So
the
effective.
CPR scene.
Oh, right.
That gave me the willies. And of course, the head spider, which was totally ripped off in It Chapter 2, if anyone has seen that movie. They totally ripped that off.
It's also in my top 5 Cinefantastic cover stories of all time. They did a beautiful article on Rob Bottin and the creature design for that movie, and it's just phenomenal. It's such a great movie. It's just suspenseful. It was Carpenter at the top of his game. And just to put it in a little bit of cultural context for people who maybe are younger or don't know, the movie was a huge bomb when it came out, 1982, another classic of 1982, because it came out the week after E.T.
Right.
So America had fallen in love with an alien.
If only it'd been a double feature.
And well,
They'd already had enough plastic in their lives.
By the time, the last thing in the world people wanted to see was this movie about, this deadly, horrifying, vicious, you can't reason with it, you can't do anything, it just wants to kill you. It was a disaster. And it really put hurt John Carpenter's career for a long time, and he came back and he did a lot of great movies, but very low budget. They Live, Prince of Darkness, a lot. But
he never did something that big again until Escape from L.A.
Well, and Memoirs of Invisible Man.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. But that was because of Chevy Chase, not because of Carpenter. Yeah.
The ending is so bleak, and without spoiling it, two characters find themselves together, and it has again one of my favorite lines of all time. I suppose that if one of us has something to show the other one, we'll find out soon enough.
I'm gonna take perhaps a not very popular view.
Oh boy, let's fight.
I enjoy the film. I think it works best when it works on that psychological level, where the scenes are dealing with the psychological tension. And I think for me, it fails when it brings out the plastic monsters.
Interesting.
And I think that it could have taken a great lesson from early Spielberg and early Ridley Scott by not showing everything all at once and saving some of that for the very specific horror. Because I think every time they break out the plastic monsters, I just shut down and I say, oh.
I don't think your point is wrong. I mean, I love the movie. I think it's great. But I think you're right. I think that, the state of the art at the time in prosthetics and was, it was sort of its apex for that era. And so it was like, just because we can do a thing,
show it off.
And they show it all. And if they had held back on it, and then, towards the end, we really see... I think it would have been a better movie. I think it would have been a more commercially successful movie.
I do too. That's just what I was thinking when I ever hear The Thing.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair point as well. Look, I have always found those effects very successful. I mean, maybe part of it is because I saw it at exactly the correct age.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
But I also, what I admire about it is that Carpenter he's making a statement with that movie. He's like, there are so many things that he's doing in that film that nobody does. I mean, as Steve pointed out, that intense sense of isolation that he brings to a movie of that scope and size.
Sure.
The way that he makes it an actor's movie, which is so different
I agree.
for the genre.
And that's where it's the most successful.
Right.
You know why I think maybe he went in that direction? Because in a way, what he's trying to do is say, this is not the 1951 Thing from Another World, which is James Arnett playing a giant carrot.
Right.
And I love it. By the way, it was almost my pick for Thursday. I love 1951 Thing. I think this is another, much like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the original is great and the remake is great.
Right.
It's not like, they screwed up the remake or the original. It's like they're both great.
Right.
And the Thing had women in it too, the original Thing. So, but I think that it is in a way he said, I'm going back to the short story, to Who Goes There, and Joseph Campbell, I think.
No.
Not Joseph Campbell.
John W. Campbell.
John W. Campbell. Yeah, not Joseph Campbell. The man with 1,000 faces, literally.
The hero, the monster with 1,000 faces.
Including your face.
But I think that in a way, he said, I'm going back to the short story. I'm not remaking the original movie. And he was doing everything he could to differentiate the remake from the original. So it's like, they didn't do this in the original.
Right.
But I kind of agree with you. It doesn't diminish my enjoyment of the movie.
Yeah.
But I think as a piece of art,
But I have
restraint would have been
in my
better.
mind, the better movie is there.
See, I'd love to see the Darren Doctorman cut.
Well, maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Someday.
Another thing I want
When you're
to give a
awfully
shout out
blue.
to is the score.
Yes.
The score of that movie is just so minimal and terrific, and it's simple, but it's just so effective.
And of course, Ennio Morricone gets the credit for it, but there's a lot of John Carpenter in it. In fact, it really, much to Ennio Morricone's chagrin, John Carpenter went in and rescored a bunch of it. So you went from the genius Ennio Morricone to John going doot 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 doot. But,
Although, I mean, look, I love Ennio Morricone, but I think
Carpenter's score is very effective.
Yes, exactly.
I agree.
And just
I agree.
generally, he seems to understand what his movies want to sound like, what they need.
I totally agree with that.
I think it needed that sparseness. I think if it was more lush and florid, it would have worked against the tone of the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Another great pick. It's up to me to ruin the week.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to your 5 picks for Thursday.
Well, I guess maybe I shouldn't pick Orca then.
Dude, if you pick Orca, I'm totally with you.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to pick Orca.
Damn it.
You know,
Derek, I mean, come on. She gets her legs bitten off by a mechanical killer whale.
But what happens in the movie?
Well, yeah.
What?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah,
please continue.
It's happening.
You know, I have to say, my runner-up. I'm not going to give you a litany. I know what I'm going to pick. My runner-up though was it was a movie. I actually like the play a lot better, so I didn't go with the movie, which was Little Shop of Horrors.
I almost
Frank
picked
Oz.
that too. Yeah.
I think there's a lot to love about that movie. I actually think the play is better, and I guess it's coming back to Broadway or off Broadway right now.
Back.
And
It's coming back.
I love the
Never
play.
left.
I love and I don't like musicals, as we know for anybody who's listening to the show. I don't like musicals, but I do like Little Shop of Horrors a lot and Hamilton. But
Same thing.
same thing, very similar. And I love the off Broadway show Little Shop of Horrors, and the movie. I think because I had just seen the show, it's sort of like Amadeus. I didn't like the movie as much, but it's great. And of course, a couple of years ago, they restored that famous stop motion ending, that
Right.
Jerry Conway stop motion ending, and
Lyle Conway.
Lyle Conway. Whatever.
I don't know who Jerry Conway is.
Jerry Conway is a
Jessica
he's a comic book writer.
Joseph Campbell. Don't listen to me. So
Jessica Von Puttermaker.
That was a great. Frank Oz directed it.
Yeah.
It's
wonderfully
just,
directed. Rick Moranis is terrific. It's a wonderful having Jack Nicholson do the Bill Murray do the cameo is a lot of fun.
Steve
And
Martin is the dentist.
Steve Martin is the dentist, an homage to the original Roger Corman movie, which of course famously was shot over a weekend and looks like it was. So it's a cute movie. The plant is a great monster.
Yeah.
It's something you can definitely
One of the
show the kids.
great puppet effects of all time.
Yep.
So great.
But my pick.
But that's not your pick.
That's not my
his
pick. I will tell you. I will tell you what my pick is, and it probably shouldn't be
Pick,
because
picker.
they like Frankenstein. There's a much more iconic movie that probably should be my pick, but we'll talk about that for Friday. I will tell you, since this is supposed to be my pick, I will pick what my Monster Mash pick is. It's a movie that I wore out on videotape when it came out on VHS. I watched it a ton in high school. I absolutely love this movie. It taught me to stay off the moors. And to watch who I played darts with. It is, of course, American Werewolf in London. Probably, well, maybe alongside Animal House, John Landis's best movie. It's a great movie that could be, before I said, I didn't watch Abbott and Costello because it combined horror and comedy. and so by the time I was a little older, apparently, I did like horror and comedy because American Werewolf does it, just perfectly. It's scary. It has great makeup effects from the werewolf transformations. That was the year you had The Howling and American Werewolf in London. I'm much more a fan of American Werewolf in London than I am of The Howling.
Was that Baker or Boutine?
It was
Well,
Baker.
Rick Baker did
American Werewolf.
American Werewolf.
And then
Yeah,
Rob
yeah.
Bottin did The Howling.
because Rob Bottin was working for Rick Baker, and he split off and he worked on The Howling using all of Rick Baker's techniques.
He clearly did
mother-
not use them, however, on Star Trek 3 when he did Kruger's dog.
Oh God.
Anyway, so American Werewolf in London, the luminous Jenny Agutter. It has a great scene where he thinks he's in a nightmare. He thinks he wakes up, but he's still in the dream, which I just think is amazingly effective. David Naughton is wonderful, but Griffin Dunn steals the movie as this slowly decaying quipster who is dying, but can't go to the afterlife because and it's just a wonderful movie. It's bizarre. They don't make movies like this anymore. It's perverse. It has all of John Landis's usual obsessions. And I had so many quotable scenes, and then the use,
enough.
That's enough. the casting of the guys in the Scottish bar, I mean, it's just brilliant. And of course, you have all these wonderful use of 50s Bad Moon, Bad Moon Rising, just a litany of sort of songs that he uses, the source music really well. The whole diegetic versus non-diegetic, but it's a terrific movie, and there's so many monster movies I like, but I just watched this so many times on HBO growing up, and so many times. I don't think I ever saw it in a theater. No, I think I may have once saw it in a theater, but I didn't see it when it came out in a theater. It was definitely one of these movies that I discovered on VHS and then watched it over and over again, and then ultimately on HBO a million times, and then I at some point in a revival theater I saw it and loved it even more.
I love that pick, and I love that film. It was on my list as well, and as many things as there are to love about it, here's my favorite thing. It is the restraint that John Landis showed in the third act of that film and the very ending, because when that movie is over, it's just over. It's done, and it goes to credits. There's no bullcrap. There's no epilogue. There's no denouement. There's no going back to the Shire. There's no hugging. There's none of that. It's just, it's
over.
And it's just, but it's great. And it somehow manages to be, sad and tragic but hilarious at the same time, and just
it has a very
dark.
similar ending that Monty Python and the Holy Grail does.
Except there's not 30 minutes of just black with just the music cycling. Yeah,
it's a very dark sense of humor, and I have to tell you, when I interviewed John Landis for the James Bond book, because he actually worked on a couple of James Bond movies, never getting credit. Spy Who Loved Me. He later almost ended up doing License to Kill. I talked to him about Bond, but I was so excited to actually talk to him about American Werewolf in London for no reason, because it had no bearing on what I was writing. But he had, as always, he's such a great raconteur. He has so many great stories, and he has great stories about, obviously, about American Werewolf in London, along with so many of these other movies that he's done. But Landis is interesting because Landis is not inherently a very gifted visual filmmaker, but yet he knows instinctively how to tell a story and how to be funny brilliantly. But you look at something like Animal House, you look at John Landis's best movies, and they are all just really, really great movies. But visually, nothing special. But yet he's a great director of actors. He's a great editor. Even on the movies that don't work, like Into the Night, just such a fascinating guy who's had such an interesting career.
Or Innocent Blood, simply as a way of making a direct comparison, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. For sure. And it's super, super talented guy, and like I said, I just think it's a great monster movie, and when we say monster, monster mash, it is a mashup because it is horror and it is comedy, and that often doesn't work like in, Innocent Blood. Where Don Rickles is a vampire, that stuff doesn't work. But in American Werewolf, and it certainly doesn't work in American Werewolf in Paris, which was a sequel that was done many years later that he was not involved
Gene
with.
Kelly's dancing in it is awful.
Werewolf or not.
So that brings us, of course, to Friday. Now, Friday is the day where we seek a consensus. So we'll see. There's so many of these movies. We'll throw out some suggestions. No doubt Steve has come prepared with some wonderful suggestions to share with us.
Well, I'm just trying to think how, there's certainly the other Universal horror films that are iconic, like Dracula, but
the Spanish version.
Which is really cool. By the way, if you've never seen the Spanish version, if you don't know the story, while the English language version was being filmed by day, the Spanish language version was being filmed at night on the same sets with a different cast.
Which I want to see a behind-the-scenes movie
about that.
Yeah.
Right? About that.
John Landis should make it. It's great. That would be really funny.
Well, I give him the idea.
It's like the old sheepdogs punching in, in the Looney Tunes cartoons. Like, there's the night shift. You're going to shoot another Dracula
I'm surprised
movie.
more people haven't done that. It's like, we can keep the studio going 24/7, and we have the whole, Latin American audience.
You know why? It's because the daytime one is shooting all during the night, too.
Yeah, that's true. They're going so deep in the overtime. Exactly. That's right.
But if you haven't seen the Spanish language one, it's like 30 minutes longer. It's significantly longer, and it plays
and it's
so
shot
much better. Yeah, it's shot better. It's the storytelling is just better in it. The characters, he gets a lot more into the characters and everything. So
The acting isn't better, but the movie making is better.
Yeah. And then there's some of the lesser known ones, but also maybe not lesser known, but Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is terrific.
Again, I think it's a better monster design than it is a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a great, and that one sheet.
Yeah.
Oh my God! If we were doing like the 430 movie one sheet, that would have to be a finalist. I mean, that's a gorgeous poster, right along with This Gun for Hire and. Well, anyway, that's a whole
One of my good friends in film school, I'd known him for several years, and around graduation time, he had a party at his house, and we went over to his house, and I'm seeing all these posters on the wall for Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm like, wow, somebody's a big fan. He's like, no, that's my mom.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Wait, the Creature from the Black Lagoon was his mom?
That's so funny.
His name was Tad.
Well,
Don't say anything about
kills. We're overlooking, I think, two of the most significant monster movies of all time. We spent a lot of time at Universal, but I think that RKO made what is arguably the greatest monster movie of all time that we haven't really talked about, which of course is Marion C. Cooper's King Kong,
right?
Which is brilliant and a staple of, I'm sure, all of our television growing up. King Kong was on, for us, it was on Channel 9,
right?
Usually on Thanksgiving, I believe.
That's correct.
And then they would show Son of Kong, which is not nearly as effective, and Mighty Joe Young.
King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
Right.
Although my only quibble with that is I feel as though that the King Kong movies weren't horror movies per se.
No.
They were adventure films.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
yes, I totally agree that the original King Kong is an amazing film.
It's a masterpiece, of course.
Yeah.
I want to throw one out that I bet is on none of your lists.
I double dog dare you.
Let's see.
It fulfills all the requirements of a monster movie. Fatal Attraction.
You're right. That's not on my list.
Not on my list. Interesting choice.
Really interesting
Who are
choice.
you and what have you done with Darren?
But it is completely a monster movie. It starts out, setting up something that you think is going one way, and then it completely goes a different way. And by the end, you're killing a monster.
Yeah.
It's
And
a
it's-
morality play,
it's
like a lot
totally-
of horror films.
Totally. And I was thinking about this as I was looking at our call sheet yesterday, and I was thinking, well, oh my God, that kind of fits.
You know what else is great about Fatal Attraction is that it also could go under movies not to watch with your mom week.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, of course not.
Oh.
I ran. No.
You know who wrote that famous ending also? Nick Meyer. Nick Meyer did the polish on Fatal Attraction.
That's right.
Yeah. So what does Star Trek 2 and Fatal Attraction have in common?
But Shakespeare isn't anywhere in it. How could that
Nobody
be
quotes Shakespeare. That's really funny. What an interesting choice. The other giant monster that's beloved that we didn't talk about, of course, is Gojira. It's Godzilla.
We're in America now.
Wow. I mean, we probably could do a whole Godzilla week, though. So maybe.
Well, the 430 movie often did Godzilla week.
Exactly. Larry Cohn died this year, so we should talk about Q, the winged serpent.
And It's Alive.
Yeah.
It's alive. Boy, that one sheet scared me.
Absolutely, me too.
Something is wrong with the Davis baby. That trailer scared the crap out of me, man. Like I was just a tiny little dude, and just that bassinet.
It's funny.
And it's
the
spinning.
trailer and the poster are scarier than the movie.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely right.
Yep.
It had
It took me
such a
forever to decide to watch that film.
Me too. It had such a mystique about it.
Yeah.
It was so intimidating. It's the thought of watching it was
Absolutely.
I knew it from Starlog. They always had the It's Alive 2 Bernard Herrmann, because I think it was Starlog
Right.
Records' first
Right.
album, and I would always see them. Turn the page.
But something like Gremlins.
Gremlins was on my list. I think Gremlins is great. It just came out in 4K from Warner Brothers, a UHD disc. Gremlins was one after Freaky Friday and Star Wars, one of the first movies I saw more than once.
Right.
I saw it on my senior class trip in high school. But Gremlins is super fun. It could also be a holiday movie.
Right, that's true.
It's and I would argue Gremlins 2, the new batch, in a lot of ways is even more entertaining.
Yeah.
Joe Dante's sequel. Gremlins at the time was a huge, and it was instrumental in the PG-13 along with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, causing the PG because it's very violent.
It was one of the great movie-going experiences of my life. I don't love the movie. I think it's not a particularly great movie, but it's fun.
Right.
And it was in 1984, that summer. It just fit right in there with Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. It was a blast to see in a packed theater in the 80s.
Totally. And you will never, at Christmas time, look at your fireplace the same way again.
Is Hoyt Axton up there? Hello. A great homage to the Universal movies we spent so much time talking about is Fred Decker's Monster Squad.
Oh, yeah. Love that movie.
The Wolfman has nards. It kind of is Stranger Things meets Universal Monsters.
It totally is.
Yeah.
It totally is.
Or as Stranger Things, Monster Squad meets D&D. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's a really it's a love letter to those movies that we love, and just really well done by Fred Decker and Peter Hyams and Shane Black, and Peter Hyams was the producer on that.
And how about this one? I think is maybe one of the more successful films that mixes comedy and horror. Young Frankenstein.
Well, of course.
Walk this way.
Yes.
I would say that Young Frankenstein is a comedy.
Right. With horror elements.
Yeah.
Well, it
uses horror.
It's a parody.
Yes.
It's a parody of Frankenstein.
Yeah, and as people might know, you can only have a movie appear on the 430 movie once, so I'm saving it for Terry Garr week. But
Gotta have one of those. So, just a couple of out-of-the-box thoughts. Or number one, Sam Raimi's Darkman, Liam Neeson.
Sure.
Is that a monster movie? Or is that a superhero movie?
Or is it a dark
or is it
superhero
both?
movie?
Or is it a revenge movie? Or is it a psycho killer movie? No one can know. But that's why it's out of the box, because we don't know what box it goes into, man.
Well, any movie with Larry Drake in it is a monster.
Exactly. When he's cutting off fingers with like a cigar cutter.
God.
I mean, come on.
Is The Fly is a monster movie?
Absolutely.
Or
The Fly
it-
is absolutely a monster. Both of them.
Both, and again, that's another example of a great 50s,
A great 50s
movie.
and a great. I just watched it the other day, and I'd forgotten. No, the Goldblum one, and I'd forgotten
Cronenberg
how
one, yeah.
great it is.
It is one of
fantastic.
my favorite horror movies of all time.
And his performance in it is unfreaking
And Gina
amazing.
Davis is great.
Yeah.
And
They're
like
all great.
American Werewolf in London, it actually demonstrates incredible restraint.
Yes.
And when that movie is done, it's done. It's awesome. And then it had a totally unnecessary sequel.
It is lean and mean. It's about 90 minutes long. There are, 4 speaking parts in it?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a stage
essentially
play.
one
Gina Davis
location.
is
Yeah.
It's a stage play.
But
Yeah.
it is a freaking masterpiece.
And people love, early Cronenberg. People love, all those. They Came From Within and Scanners and Rabid and all that. I really love The Fly and The Dead Zone. Like I love his more mainstream period. Where he a little more restrained. And you can't beat The Fly. Mid 80s, 20th
swat
Century Fox. It's so effective. And
like all good horror, it's about something other than the monster.
Right,
It's that body horror,
Yeah.
that the analogy to AIDS, and
Right.
your body turning on you.
Yeah.
And
the
Jeff
horror of
Goldblum
that.
not wearing pants.
Oh,
Wait,
he
no.
wears pants.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Just not always.
He's
Just not
shirtless
always.
a lot.
He is.
yes.
Yeah.
And he's
Like
in
that really
remarkable
weird
shape.
shot in Jurassic Park. I don't know why all of a sudden I've got this mental Rolodex of Jeff Goldblum not wearing a shirt. It's very strange.
I know why.
It is what it is. We all know why.
okay, well,
Hey, we have missed what I think is the greatest monster movie of all time.
Monsters Inc. No.
No. Jaws.
Well, because Jaws it was in Spielberg week, wasn't it?
True.
It is a great monster movie.
but it's also an adventure movie.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
But there is Great White,
Yes.
the movie Great White.
Yeah, and Orca.
Orca. We can go back to Orca. I didn't pick it.
And Deep Blue Sea.
Yes. No, Deep Blue. There's a great argument for Deep Blue Sea, just for Samuel L. Jackson alone.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You
Also,
could go something like The Host.
the host. That's right. The
Interesting.
Korean,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
South Korean. I was going to say North Korean. The South Korean horror movie, which is a great film. Also, a movie that a lot of people like more than me. Tremors. Kevin Bacon and Michael
entertaining.
Gross.
Very entertaining.
People love Tremors. I think it's
I like
fun.
it.
I think it's a B movie. It's a
It's
fun
fine.
B
Yeah.
movie.
I don't love it. But there's my my original pick before I decided that I needed to inject some mainstream into our conversation was Stuart Gordon's Reanimator.
Well,
Which, by the way, the movie starts with, I don't know if many people don't know this, but the first person who is killed and reanimated in the film is a Dr. Hans Gruber.
oh, is that right?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
That's funny.
But yeah, Jeff Combs is amazing in that movie. Barbara Crampton.
Is that a monster movie?
see,
It's a horror movie. It's not a
Yeah,
monster
see,
movie.
Kind of. I feel the way you do, and believe me, I love Reanimator.
Yeah,
We've
so
talked
do I.
about this on Glorious Trexperts. In fact, we ended up putting, as you know, he was on Glorious Trexperts, and 3 weeks later, I ended up having him on Pandora, and he was freaking great.
How many stories about Reanimator did you get out of him?
A lot. So, but you know, Jeff is just fantastic. In fact, the episode was on last week, and he was fantastic. But
He is a delight. He is one of my
he is a
favorite
delight,
actors.
and I love Reanimator. I've always loved Reanimator. I mentioned in the Star Trek episode I had a poster in my high school office, my newspaper office, of him, that huge French poster, holding the syringe. And I love Reanimator. I don't want to be in the position of not saying Reanimator, but I don't think it's a
arguably,
monster
not a
movie.
monster movie.
It's I would say that arguably it is the best Frankenstein movie other than the 1931 Frankenstein film.
Wow, good
but in
argument.
that Frankenstein
Good
movie,
argument.
the Frankenstein's monster, instead of taking a flower from a little girl,
He deflowers a
he
little.
deflowers her.
I would. That's very funny. I would argue that Weird Science is the best Frankenstein movie after Frankenstein.
You know, that's it. That sounds like a week to me.
I haven't watched Weird Science in a long time, and obviously, some of these movies become less palatable to certain people over time.
Sure.
How does Weird Science hold up?
It doesn't really,
Yeah, okay.
but that's not its fault.
Called her on the telephone.
Hey, look, it was Weird
sex
Science
comedy,
wasn't A-list John Hughes even back then. So, my argument would be for The Fly. I would really push for The Fly. I think.
I would go there.
Fly.
I agree.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
It's hard to argue with The Fly.
Okay, The Fly
Well,
has
why don't we teleport it into Friday?
consider it done. So this was our as we count down to Halloween later this month, and our first episode back. I would say was a success.
I would think so. Too.
And
We remembered how to do this.
we didn't forget.
It's just like falling off a bike.
And it hurts as much. So Monday,
Monday is 1931's Frankenstein.
Tuesday.
Tuesday is Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Wednesday.
John Carpenter's 1982 The Thing.
Thursday, it's American Werewolf in London.
What year was that? Was that 81? 80? 79. 79.
No, it
No.
was 80.
Are
It
we
was,
bidding?
it was- Do I hear? Okay, we very rarely do this, but we are going to go to IMDb because I don't want to be wrong on this. I think it was 81, but I could be wrong. So let's see here. It may have been 80,
1981.
actually. Oh, 81! Woo! Woo-hoo! I still got it, baby! Okay, so, and then Friday,
Friday,
of course, is
McFry!
David Cronenberg's The Fly. Well, wow, that was great. And, we're going to be back next week with another all-new episode of the 4:30 movie. And I'm going to give you a little preview. It's going to be, since we're celebrating Halloween all week, The Devil Made Me Do It. The Devil Made Me Do It. So that will
Think
be...
about that while you listen to other podcasts.
And we'll be back next Friday and every Friday for the foreseeable future for season 2 of the 4:30 movie. And we really appreciate you coming back and joining us. We have a lot of fun doing the show, and it's great to have such a loyal viewing audience. And also, if you were a fan of Star Trek, check out the second season of Inglorious Trexperts, which had a much shorter hiatus. It had 1 week hiatus
one week
as
hiatus.
opposed to a 6-month hiatus. You can check that out every Saturday. Wherever you listen to podcasts. On Tuesday, check out The Rebel and the Rogue, a Star Wars podcast. That's every Tuesday. And on Monday, every other Monday, is Best Movies Never Made, which is next to our podcast, one of my favorite podcasts. I just love that podcast. Josh Miller and the great Steven Scarlotta.
With some really
who
terrific
produced
guests.
Jodorowsky's Dune. Oh, yeah, Ashley was a guest. But they've covered really interesting movies. Mick Garris was on recently to talk about his unmade version of The Mummy.
Steve, you were a guest too, weren't you?
Yes,
Steve
we
was.
talked about Beetlejuice.
They talked about
sequels.
Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. The unmade Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. So you should check those out. And in fact, we did an episode of their show. They weren't on it, but we did best, the Academy years for Inglourious Treksperts, where we talked with David Lowery about the unmade Starfleet Academy movie. So always a fascinating subject. Maybe one day on 430 Movie we'll do best movies never made. But if you enjoyed this podcast, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And if you're thinking about giving us 4 stars, don't. Give us 5. 5 is the magic number. And all very special thanks to Bill Ritter. And especially Natalie Miscali, who is our producer, and Dean Devlin, who keeps the lights on, and without whom the show would not be possible. So thank you, Bill, Natalie, and Dean, for giving us a home here at the Electric Surge Network. And we will be back with an all-new theme week on the 430 movie next week. Until then, Eyewitness News starts now.
This episode brought to you by Juice of Safu. It is by will alone I set my mind in motion. It is by the juice of Safu that the mind acquires speed, the lips acquire stains, the stains become a warning. It is by will alone I set my mind in motion. Set your mind in motion with Juice of Safu.
This show is produced by Dean Devlin and Mark A. Altman and is an Electric Surge Network production.